Recent reports have shown that MAGA districts, MAGA cities, red states is where all of the trans porn is searched up and consumed. And so it will come as no surprise to anyone. Kylie put up the following headline: MAGA Republican exposed for following transgender adult film star online. A MAGA Republican running for Wisconsin governor just dropped out of the race after being caught following a trans adult film star and other sexually explicit writers online. Bill Berrien, a manufacturing exec and former Navy SEAL, had campaigned on, quote, Republican family values and promised to discriminate against trans kids in school sports. But the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel revealed his Medium account followed a trans porn star and writers on polyamory and explicit essays. Berrien deleted the account and quit the race, saying the media spun, quote, stupid articles into a salacious and sensational attack. In his exit statement, he insisted nothing he read was illegal, unethical, or immoral, but he did not acknowledge how his personal proclivities were antithetical to the MAGA movement and his campaign promises. And here's the thing. I just have always known the louder the Christian, the more fucked up the family. Always has been true. And the more somebody talks about gay and trans people, I need to see the Google search history, and I need to know if I go to your phone and I try to install Grindr, does it say reinstall? I want to know those two things.
Well, I don't think there's any question that it does, because we have all this data. Where does porn and transgender porn, where does it get consumed the most? The Bible Belt.
Yep.
This guy. And you cannot pick up your phone without there being some type of MAGA associated candidate, elected official, preacher. I probably bookmark 2 a week that they have come across, and they are exploiting children by watching films with children, like little
child
kids.
sex abuse evidence.
Child sex abuse evidence. That's how we say it. And it's time and time again. And every single time I see it, it says Republican Christian values. They have family Christian values. They're big supporters of MAGA. It's like 10 out of 10.
100%. Okay. Next up, something the Democrats really need to start messaging is this whole $20 billion bailout to Argentina. And it's interesting. And fortunately for us, independent media, and this is by Now This Impact, they have dug deep into why is Kank so obsessed with bailing out Argentina? Follow the money. Who is benefiting from this? Because we sure as fuck know the MAGA voters that are not getting health care right now, they're not benefiting from it. So who is? Who's benefiting from this $20 billion? Watch this clip.
Taxpayers are bailing out Argentina with $20 billion, and it mostly benefits one well-connected GOP billionaire while hurting American farmers. Back in 2023, Elon Musk tweeted this after the country elected right-wing populist Javier Milei as president. Just 2 years later, Argentina found itself begging the U.S. for help after taking a chainsaw to its economy, much like Musk did here, leaving the country in crisis. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced a $20 billion package to rescue their economy, which has almost no impact on the U.S. I thought Trump was supposed to be America first, but Bessent's announcement did have a huge benefit for one American billionaire hedge fund manager, Rob Citron, a close friend of Bessent's and the co-founder of Discovery Capital Management. Citron has invested heavily in Argentina's right-wing economic program, and just days before the bailout announcement, he purchased even more Argentine bonds. So thanks to U.S. taxpayers, this billionaire's precious investments are protected amid a downturn, and his profits will get a boost. And guess what else? Leaked texts from Bessent's phone show the U.S. may have gotten played, as right after the deal, Argentina removed export taxes on soybeans and struck a trade deal with China, which immediately pulled out of existing soybean arrangements with American farmers. In the end, our tax dollars will help the right-wing Argentina government, China, and this one billionaire friend of Bessent's.
$20 billion, MAGA, $20 billion for one fat cat friend of Donald Trump. And we're going to have to bail out the farmers, the U.S. farmers that Trump has lied to. And he likes to just play fuck around and find out with his tariffs for sport. He's wrecking the U.S. economy. And of course, there's some fat cat suck ass billionaire that they curry favor with. It's unbelievable. We are not a stable country with integrity. The U.S. economy, I believe right now, the stocks are wildly overvalued. It is a massive bubble that is going to pop. And then who are we going to ask to bail us out?
Oh, Canada, because they love us so much. I mean, here's the thing. I look at that. That's a cautionary tale. Trump and Elon Musk, Argentina just executed the economy they want to execute. And guess what? They're broke. And here's the thing, too. I find it so interesting that Trump is so easy to write a $20 billion check to Argentina to save this guy's fat ass. But I keep hearing about the bailout for the farmers, but I haven't seen any numbers on it.
You know, he'll probably end up doing it at some point because for him, it's no big deal. But hide and watch, I guarantee you got a kickback from this Argentinian billionaire.
There's no question.
There's 100% he had to have gotten a kickback from that. Okay, moving along. AOC is really stepping into this moment. God, I wish she were the minority leader in the House because we need this type of leadership. We need this type of messaging. And day after day, she always has the message that I need to hear. Play the clip.
I think there's two things that are happening at once, and this is something that's very important for people to understand. One, there absolutely is an unprecedented abuse of power, destruction of norms, erosion of our government and our democracy in order to prop up an authoritarian style of governance. That is happening. However, they are weaker than they look. And it is important that we remember that because what they rely on is the impression of power, the perception of inevitability, in us giving up in advance to say, oh, what's going to happen if I stand up, etc. Nothing's going to happen. They rely on that perception of inevitability and power so that people comply in advance and acquiesce in advance and give up in advance. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is at record levels of unpopularity in his tenure. The Republican House is at record levels of unpopularity. They are underwater across the board, and they know it. And that is causing them to double down in public, but it is backfiring. That is why, whether it's a shutdown, whether it's all of this, they want us to blink first. And we have too much to save. Protecting people is too important a task for us to give up before anything even starts. So they may want to send people in, but these National Guardsmen do not want to be turned against their fellow Americans. We're seeing this here in Washington, D.C. It is an insult. Donald Trump is insulting the service members of this country by putting them on these silly tasks that they themselves do not want to be enforcing. And so we have to understand that standing up matters, that our voice matters, to not give in to the cynicism, because that is what they rely on in order to perpetuate this idea that they are that they have total immunity from consequence. They will experience the consequences of this, but we have to be the consequence, which is why we have to stand tall right now alongside everyday Americans who want us to be standing up right now as well.
It's excellent messaging. And we played a video earlier, another episode with her and Bernie Sanders messaging. And I think what is just so crazy about when you hear AOC and you hear Bernie, the people that hate them the most are the people that they're fighting the hardest for.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's the difference between the left and the right. The left will fight for these MAGA morons that voted against their best interest because we believe in humanity and we believe in their right to dignity and to treat them as human beings and for them to have equal rights under the law. On the right, they want to make sure nobody's getting anything extra. Not one fucking thing. Not one thing, you poor people. If you're brown or black, fuck you. If you're gay, triple fuck you. If you're trans, blast off the face of the planet. But billionaires, we will fight tooth and nail for you to have all of the money. It is fucking crazy. It is so crazy how successful Republicans have been at contorting a percentage of the American public to vote for people who make infinitely more money than they do and to always vote against their own self-interest. It's fascinating.
I'll tell you what else is fascinating. The MAGA voter, the typical MAGA voter that shows up at the Capitol to storm the Capitol, Donald Trump despises them.
Yeah.
He would no more let those people come have a party at Mar-a-Lago and let's yuck it up for the evening than the man in the moon, because he views them as less than. But you know what I think is so interesting is all this stuff they're putting on all the government websites and the answering machines.
It's propaganda.
And it tells me
It's a
they know
fascist
how
propaganda.
unpopular it is.
Yeah, it's just fascist propaganda because they are trying to exude strength.
Yep.
But all of those things are just textbook fascist propaganda that fascist governments use. Next up, we have excellent thought here from Peter Beinart. You should follow him on Instagram. He's a very, very thoughtful, great thought leader, and I love what he says here.
Republican Party was always, for as long as I can remember, like to talk about appeasement, like to talk about cowardice. They'll always imagine themselves as the kind of the Churchills, the manly men, the people who could be counted on in the moment of peril to stand up to the forces of evil. I mean, what an utter irony that has turned to be, right? Because it turned out that there is no greater group of appeasers, no greater group of cowards than the people in the modern Republican Party today, who, because they're afraid of Donald Trump, afraid that he could get them to lose their job, or afraid that he might go after them personally. Because after all, Donald Trump goes after Republicans too, right? Beyond that, I look at the organized American Jewish community. I mean, just go to the websites of the most powerful American Jewish organizations. AIPAC, the Anti-Defamation League, the Conference of Presidents of American Jewish Organizations. Would you realize that American democracy is in peril? Would you realize that the Trump administration is trying to create an authoritarian state? No, you would see virtually nothing of that, because these organizations care really only about one thing: about maintaining unconditional U.S. support for Israel. It's much more important to them that America maintains unconditional support for Israel than that America remains a liberal democracy. They would actually prefer an authoritarian America that supports Israel unconditionally than a liberal democratic America that changes its policy on Israel. And the evidence is right in front of you. Just look at what outrages them. Look at what they focus their political attention on. So it's not opposing Donald Trump's obviously nakedly obvious efforts at creating an authoritarian tyrannical state. I take some comfort in the notion that those leaders in our community, as well as those Republicans in Congress, as well as those business leaders and people in industry and some of these university presidents, that all of them will be judged. I think we're already in terrible, terrible times, and probably heading for worse. And so I think there is a Jewish tradition in moments of great pain and trauma of taking refuge in the idea that we believe in a God who judges, and that there is some kind of cosmic justice, even if we can't understand it, even if we may not live to see it. And from the depths of my being, I hope that there is an accounting, that there is a reckoning, there is a judgment for the profound moral cowardice that is allowing the evil that is taking place, both in the destruction of Palestinians, in the genocide in Gaza, and the destruction of the basic principles of liberal democracy in the United States. All of us need to not give in to despair, to not look away, to look this in the eye and do whatever possibly we can to fight against this evil.
I just thought that was really brilliant. And I think he's such an incredible thought leader. I think that you have these Republicans, and he's right, for years they considered themselves the Churchills and that they wouldn't appease. And now they're the party of cowardice. And he's a spot on about these Jewish organizations that are hell-bent and fixated on just unilateral support from the United States government. And they don't give a shit about American citizens. You've literally got people that live in rural America that really have no idea where Israel or Palestine is. It's something in the Middle East, and people have always been fighting. That's what people in flyover states think about that space. And they're paying their money, their hardworking money, their taxes, firemen, farmers, plumbers, electricians, grocery store clerks, they're paying their money to go over to Israel to kill civilians and do a genocide. It's so devastating when you think about all of that. But he says, Peter Beinart there says, don't give in to despair. And I don't believe in God. I think he's Jewish, and I appreciate Jewish voices that speak out against the war crimes that the Israeli government is doing. I just think that what's happening, we can't give in to despair, and we have to believe, like Martin Luther King said about the arc of the moral universe, and that it will bend, towards justice. And lastly, this was another fascinating. You guys, I'm taking you on a tour of my Instagram saves of the week. And this is Joy Reid with, I think, some really fascinating reporting on how Charlie Kirk got his start, how he was discovered, and who funded him, and how he ascended to the level that he did. Listen to Joy.
Now, talk about that watch list, because I don't know if people really know about this.
Right. And first of all, what you have to understand about Charlie Kirk is the reason he dropped out of junior college at 18 years old is because he was discovered by a man named Bill Montgomery, who was a Tea Partier, a very rich, I think probably billionaire, who spotted him when he was in high school spouting free market conservative ideas and convinced him, became his mentor. This man was 72 years old, and he gave him $4.7 million to start Turning Point USA. And the first thing that Turning Point USA did, they started this in 2012. This is when Barack Obama was running for re-election, and a lot of the right were really fearful that he had the youth on their side. What they had was Rush Limbaugh, whose audience was much older. So what they decided they needed to do was take that Rush Limbaugh energy, right-wing talk radio, and get it with the young people, right? Mm-hmm. And get it on the campuses. And the right has always been angry that they feel college campuses are too liberal. So Turning Point USA was really started by the 72-year-old man, Bill Montgomery, but he was the face, Charlie Kirk. And what they did was they sent him onto campuses to try to argue for the free market. When that didn't really take off, he eventually turned to things that are easier to sell: racism, sexism, misogyny, just hate talk. But that started to make it take off. And during the pandemic, he really blew up. That is where he came from. And so, one of the projects that Turning Point USA created that still exists to this day is what they called a campus watch list. And what that is a snitch list. They basically encourage people on college campuses who are conservative to report on their professors who they think are too liberal, who spout liberal ideas. They put their names, their addresses. In some cases, they dox them, and they encourage them to be attacked. And so some of the people on that watch list, who are mainly Black women, brown folks, gay folks, people who are minorities, are on that list. They've been doxxed. They've been terrorized. People have reported getting death threats from being on that list.
So I think that's really fascinating, because you see how the right wing, they play a long-term game. Rush Limbaugh was fringe that boomers listened to, that were kind of get off my yard vibes. And during the Obama era, the Republican Party had a major youth problem. And it's also interesting that Charlie Kirk originally tried to talk about free markets, snooze fest, right? So then he goes in with the culture wars, and that always riles people up. And the culture war thing is at the epicenter of the MAGA movement, and all of the things that Joy Reid just listed there: misogyny, racism, sexism. All of that stuff is in the Bible as well. So you have this merging of the right-wing media echo chamber, right-wing policy, Project 2025, and the Republican Party, all coming together for this moment. But I think it's a bubble that's going to pop. And we have to remember what AOC said. We have to remember what Peter said. We cannot despair. We have to fight. Like during the 60s, they had a moment, civil rights moment. People, real civil justice warriors, were assassinated. Robert Kennedy, the very progressive, very smart, non-freak show father of RFK Jr., was shot. Of course, John Kennedy was shot. And I think it was a really traumatic time for the country. And you saw a lot of white evangelical Christians spitting on white people, beating them up when they came home from Vietnam. These Black men served in combat and then came home, and these white evangelicals, and it's those white evangelicals are still here today. Those white evangelicals started with the KKK, and it's time that the Democratic Party start attacking the shit out of them, because they have a faith that is, it's just a heart full of hate. It is cruelty. It is absolute cruelty, and they like it. They like to see people be treated as less than.
Mhm.
They enjoy, in a Pavlovian type of way, they enjoy the idea of racism, sexism, homophobia.
Well, it's part of their religion, as you said.
That's all we have for this episode. Please subscribe and like, and we'll be back later with more news.